There's not many people who can say that their life story has been told by a famous Hollywood actor. But my guest today can do just that. Hugo Weaving is playing Martyn Scrimshaw as the Airport Chaplain. Now, I say playing it, it's technically a drama series. It's not a biop or anything like that, but it is based on Martyn's story. We're going to hear how it really is based on his story today and the incredible work of what airport chaplains do. But the surprising twist in the tale here on this conversation today is actually what an airport chaplain does is exactly something you could be doing. And Martyn's going to really pinpoint that for us as we get to the end of this incredible conversation with him. He's got lots of great stories. There's lots of light and shade in this conversation. We had plenty of laughs. We had lots of just wow moments and depth of his story as an airport chaplain. Let's get stuck into it. Please like, rate, review, share this with other people. It helps us get it out to more and more people. Let's have a chat to Martyn Scrimshaw. Really, really wonderful to have in the studio with me for this edition of Towards Understanding, the man whose story has inspired the upcoming SBS and Netflix show that's actually coming up in the next week called The Airport Chaplain. He's the head chaplain at Melbourne Airport. Martyn Scrimshaw joins me in the studio. Thanks so much for coming in, Martyn.
Thanks, Clayton, for having me.
It is so wonderful to have a chat to you. And I suppose that the first question is, did you get a say in casting Hugo Weaving as yourself in it? Was that is this what you had the writer in there to make sure that was the case?
No, in actual fact, I think there was a bit of a book running at the airport for a while with saying who should play the role. Yes. But very important to say that this is a drama. It's not a biopic. Yes. But it was lovely when they actually brought Hugo into the airport to meet me after they cast him. It was a secret. And then I met Hugo and I was blown away. I think at that point I really understood that they were serious about making this production. So yeah.
Let's stay with it a bit more, and then we want to actually backtrack and talk a bit of your story, because we're here to actually talk about what chaplaincy means and your role in those things. But this is a great reason to have you in too. Talk to us actually about how it even came about. Like, how did the idea come about that someone said, let's do a drama about sort of an airport chaplain? And I know that you were sort of the inspiration without knowing you were the inspiration.
Well, that's right, because it was actually, I was doing my job. So 3 years ago, I got referred to a lady that was Jude Troy from Wooden Horse. She doesn't mind me saying the story because she's selling it. But she had unfortunately arrived at the airport, left her handbag with everything in it on the back seat of the Uber, and by the time she realised that all she could see was the Uber driving off in the distance. If you've ever tried to go through your app and try to get that, and it's asking for authentication, which was going to the back seat of the Uber.
Oh, no.
So she was very frantic, and eventually somebody said, look, I've got to go. She was being helped, said, I've got to go, but I know somebody who can help. And I came along and met Jude, and then for 2.5 hours, we went on a journey through the airport while I was trying to figure out how I could actually contact Uber. And eventually we were able to get into her account and change a few things so we could contact the Uber and convince the Uber driver to come back just in time to get Jude on the very last flight out of Melbourne home to Sydney.
Wow.
That night. And nothing more was said. She was asking me lots of questions, but people do, because they don't expect to see somebody like a chaplain at an airport. Okay. She phoned me the next day and said, I'm actually a TV producer and I haven't slept all night, and I would love to talk to you about possible of writing a story out of this.
Wow.
And that was 3 years ago, and since then I've met writers and investigators. We've had people in the airport, different cast members, talking to people in the airport, trying to understand the role. I had a lovely 2.5 hour session with Hugo, which was amazing. You're just pumping me a whole lot of information, even taking photos of my shoes and my notebook, to make it genuine. And of course, then last Saturday night, they actually had the premiere, and going to be on SBS next to Wednesday night, eight half-hour episodes telling stories.
Yeah. Incredible, isn't it? It's truly remarkable that just you go about your job, you go about what it is, and then suddenly this is what's happened. Do you, from your perspective, as you think about this, I'm imagining there's an element of, oh boy, come on, like, I'm just doing the job, stop focusing on it. But I'd imagine there might be also another aspect that says, well, this is a great way to actually talk about chaplaincy and the importance of it, not just for you, but more broadly. Is that a part of why you've gone, well, okay, let's jump into this a bit more?
I think it was, but also I think I had a lot of fear and trepidation at the start. A lot of what we do, we try and do under the radar. We try because we're just there to help. We've often said we don't advertise because I think if we did, the floodgates would open. I know a story of where my predecessor actually helped a homeless person with a flight, and that person then went, it was wonderful, the chaplain buys flights, and the next morning you turned up and there was a queue waiting at information to get flights. So we sort of do what we do.
Yes.
And obviously having to trust somebody because it is a drama, it is made up. Obviously, they've got lots of ideas from us, and we've given them maybe bases of stories, but then they've taken
they made
and created
a TV
a drama,
show. Yeah, that's right.
made a TV show.
That's right, yeah.
So then you've got to trust that.
Yeah.
But what I've seen so far is I've had the privilege of seeing a couple of episodes, and it's a great story. But it's amazing that it actually is centred around an airport chaplain. Yeah,
incredible, isn't it? Love that. Let's actually go and talk a bit about your story then. For now. Firstly, someone might say, sorry, did you say there's a chaplain at the airport? They might not necessarily think, maybe there's a chaplain at the hospital. Maybe that's where it is.
Yeah.
Where did the idea of chaplain in airport, has it actually been around for a long, long time and people haven't realised?
Yeah, it has been around for a long time. So if we wind the clock back, we used to have ITIM industry chaplains, and they used to be in factories and everything else. Airports was a similar thing. Often a local priest, Anglican priest, or a minister, even Salvation Army officer, may have gone, and their second role would have been. So right back, way back, chaplains have been in the airport. For a period there, then when airports got privatised, especially in Australia, chaplaincy disappeared from airports because of cost and whatever else. But we were fortunate in, I've got a lady on my team, her name's Mary Holloway, and her dad was the chaplain when Melbourne Airport moved from Essendon to Tullamarine. And so when chaplaincy stopped, she tried to stay connected to the airport through emergency management and VCC ministries. And badgered many people, and eventually in 2011 they reached out to the Salvation Army at that time to see if they could provide a chaplain, and so chaplaincy was reinstated in the airport.
Yeah. And when did you get involved with
So I in 2018 I was in a role and got a phone call out of the blue saying, have you thought about going to the airport? Would you like to be the next chaplain after my predecessor retired? That had never been on my radar.
No.
Never. Couldn't even dream about something like that. And I went, and I was fortunate that I was in a role where I could spend some time shadowing my predecessor, which was fantastic. So I spent 3 months doing a day or 2 days a week. And then, January 2018, I was inducted into the role, and been through incredible time before COVID.
Yeah.
And then when COVID came, I really thought that everything was being shut down and people were being stood down. But the airport came to us and said, look, we think we're going to need chaplains more than we've ever needed them before. And so they really reinforced us staying through COVID.
Yeah.
And then the journey's gone on from there.
Yeah,
Yep.
Incredible. Could you talk to us too about this idea of faith, chaplaincy? That the airport is a public perspective. There's lots of people of all sorts of different faith coming through.
Yeah.
The fact that the airport itself is saying, well, actually, we think there's a value here is important. Just talk to us about, I suppose, how you live out your faith in Jesus in a perspective of all of that and what that means to actually be the chaplain.
Yeah, I've often said that I hold the chaplaincy in the airport lightly, if that makes sense, in the fact that we're in a corporate environment. Do they actually need faith-based chaplains there? And so we're always respectful of that we work in a very diverse, very multicultural, very all genders, everything that comes together in the mix of the airport, from staff to passengers. When I first started, I had this weird idea. I thought I'd done an investigation. I thought, a few thousand staff and maybe 5,000 or 10,000 passengers a day, and then the number started to blow me out the water. And today we have, 23,000 staff and 100,000 plus passengers every single day.
Boy.
So to be able to be in that space is just an incredible blessing. And to have the support that we do from the airport management, but also from airlines and ground handlers. And there's almost not a place that we are not welcome in around the airport. So I can go out with the fireys, we can go to the catering company, we can go to visit all the baggage handlers. We just are welcomed into all those spaces. And it's just because we're there to support.
Yeah.
We don't push our faith. But there's been some incredible opportunities, and also some times when I've actually blown it as well.
Yeah, right.
So,
I'd imagine there's as much learning out of the blown it as the ones where it's been incredible.
Yeah, well, probably the biggest one I remember is had a lady that was she mentioned that she had a sort of a faith background, and I had a student with me, and I to this day I'm not sure whether perhaps I was trying to show off to the student, and we've been talking about opportunities that happen, and the student happened to mention to me maybe this lady was open to things, and I've always come from the place where, I always do, come from the place where if God wants something to happen, He makes it happen, and then the door opens. And when the door opens, people are receptive to that.
Yep.
But in this instance, I sat with this lady who was going through a bit of a trauma. It was regarding a death of a family member and a funeral and all that sort of stuff. And I was sitting there, and I actually asked her if she wanted me to pray with her. And she said yes, which is probably the respectful thing to do. But I can remember to this day looking up because we're in a cafe, you sort of don't pray with your eyes shut, and I looked at her face, and the look on her face, I had to finish the prayer almost straight away because I thought, I've hurt this person. She wasn't ready to receive it. She's going through so much. She didn't need me to, she accepted it, but it wasn't what she wanted or what she needed. And I thought, I'm doing more damage. From that point, it was another reminder to me, wait until God does it. And I've got to say, sometimes the opposite of what has happened when God does it is absolutely amazing.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Talk to us too, for those who may not be aware, is it a full-time job that you do? Yeah. So the idea of what's the job position? Without going through line by line, but what does it actually mean? Okay, you wander the halls, you try and talk to as many people as you can, you help people. What is it that you actually walk into every day? This is what I'm supposed to be doing. So
in a snapshot, we say the chaplaincy is there to provide spiritual and emotional and practical support to passengers and staff who are at the airport. So that can be anything. Practical, often a lot of that is in the social space. So we do have rough sleepers at the airport, for example. So we do try to make connection with them, especially if we've seen them for a few nights, and we'll try and find out if they've had connection to a homeless service, what their story is. So we try and do that in that space. Staff can be anything. Like I've had staff come to me and worried about a family member that might be suicidal or going through some mental health or relationship breakup. So we just found ourselves, I've often said that my journey in the airport, I've actually been asked often harder spiritual questions than I've ever was asked as a pastor of a church for 20 years.
Interesting.
And I think it's because there's a freedom there. I'm not their pastor, but they know that we come from a spiritual background, and sometimes they just want to ask, something that's on their mind. They're not going to ask anybody else, but they'll ask it. I don't have the answers, but it gives them an opportunity to flesh that sort of stuff out. And then the passenger stuff can be anything. Probably our harder stuff is when there's a death on a plane, and then we're there supporting family, first responders, just helping the process to happen. Or if there's people for news. So just a couple of weeks ago, I had, in 2 days in a row, I had somebody who got off a plane, took a phone call, found out that a loved one had suicided. So we were called and provided support and then helped them get a flight back to where they came so they could get back to family. We've had it where somebody's in hospital passing away and people are coming from overseas, and we have such a relationship with Border Force and the airport. We go and actually go to the door of the plane, meet them, help them with the process. We have everything prepared, and then often we can get them into a car or whatever, or to family, to a hospital very quickly so they can get to see their loved one. So we try and make it as relaxed, or not relaxed, but as easy as possible with the least questions, and we look after them while they're carrying that emotional stuff with them. Yeah.
It's incredible, isn't it? Martyn Scrimshaw is my guest. He is the head chaplain at Melbourne Airport. We're going to talk a bit more about, it does seem like there's probably going to need to be a few other people if you've got that many thousands of people coming through. So we'll talk to him about that next. And he's been the inspiration for this new TV show, which is out on SBS this upcoming week, called The Airport Chaplain. Back in a couple of minutes' time here on Towards Understanding.
Share your brand, your event, your message across 90 Christian radio stations and major cities in Australia and New Zealand by sponsoring Towards Understanding, hosted by Clayton. More than 210,000 people tune into Towards Understanding each week, and with just one sponsorship, you'll reach this immense engaged audience. Find out more about this exciting and unique opportunity now on the sponsorship page at positivemedia.com.au.
We did mention there you're the head chaplain, and I think you talked about 23,000 employees, 100,000 plus people going through the airport every day as well. I'd imagine you do need a team. You couldn't possibly get around to everybody. How big is the team?
So I'm really blessed that I've got a number of volunteer chaplains, and in this last round of funding and contract, the airport recognised the value of chaplaincy, and they actually increased the funding, so we've now been able to employ a part-time chaplain to support me. Wonderful. Which is fantastic, and I have about 6 volunteers. Look, we probably could be a bigger team, but we find that we cope stuff, and I think we take it on the basis that from our faith basis that we actually get to see the people who need us. Yes. There's so many people in the airport, but there's an incredible team of volunteers that do the customer service. We work with the airport staff who do an incredible job right across the airport. So we just provide that support into that space. Yeah. And the amount of times we have found ourselves in the right place at the right time with a person who needs us, yes. It can't be coincidence. It's actually God's leading us around the place.
Yeah, it's great. You sort of indicated, it is a melting pot. The airport's this quite unique spot when you actually think about all of society, where you have so many ages of people, mixes of ethnicity, different perspectives on life, and then as a rule, everyone's tense. If you're going through the airport, maybe you're a bit nervous, or maybe you're trying to make sure you're on time. There's all the security checks. There's all everything's very official and very to the letter and all that sort of thing. And if you've just come in, you maybe you're exhausted or whatever. I would imagine that's do you feel the tension, or are you sort of used to it now?
I think you do get used to it, but I've the whole time I've been there, I've often said that I would love to do a study of what happens to even the sanest person when they walk through the glass doors of an airport. Yes. There is just something about all of a sudden that people can't read or signs. They don't hear announcements, or they're trying to find their way and they can't find their way. I think it is the environment. People can seem to be able to get on a train or a bus or drive a car wherever, but I think it's this whole concept, you're right, about security, or if I don't miss the plane, or the whole process, having passports, I think it's the environment that's created, and often a very busy environment. It's all time constraint, but we find our place in there. And I can remember getting called once to a a young bloke that was all in black, had thrown his bag across because he's missed his flight. And they called me because he was sitting on the floor in the middle of the terminal, just sitting there. And the staff, to a certain extent, were a little bit, because of the way he'd spoken to them, like in his anger and thrown the bag. Anyway, I came to him and he wouldn't answer me. So I just sat on the floor, and I reckon I sat next to him for 20 minutes, didn't say a word. And I think then he eventually realised that I wasn't going away. Yeah. And I opened up and then discovered that he was actually trying to travel interstate because he got news that his very young daughter had been rushed into hospital. So here's a reason why he's angry. He's angry to a certain extent. But then I heard he'd travelled from country Victoria, used public transport. The train got held up. The bus got held up, traffic there. Yeah. And by the time he got to the airport, he thought he'd given himself plenty of time, missed his flight. Yeah. So I was able to verify with relatives in interstate that he was, that the daughter was there, but she was in hospital and things. So I then went to the airline and said, look, here's a story. We don't want to recognise bad behaviour, but this is what I want to do for that young man. And they helped me. They looked for another flight, got him on a flight. I went back to him and said, you're on your way to Hobart. Yeah. He stood up and he walked away from me. And then I saw him and he was talking to the staff, and they came to me and said, did you tell him to come over and apologise? I said, no. I said, but it's the difference what hope does. Now he's got hope. And I've never met such a lovely young gentleman once he was provided with that hope. And I think that's the space we find ourselves in. Yeah. I often say, when the situations seem hopeless, we try and find a way out of it to give people hope. Yep. Let me say that was very difficult in the years of COVID. Yeah. Right? It was very difficult. Yeah. And even sometimes I think I got in that space where I feel hopeless or helpless. Yeah. But that's what we do as the chaplains. So we find people that are struggling and we try and find a way forward. Yeah.
I would imagine if that's the job, right, and that's what you're doing every day, that there's a depletion that takes place, right? Like, I mean, you're obviously an incredibly positive person in that sense. You've got a faith that's holding you there, all of those things, right? And you know it's the role. How do you sort of support yourself in that, right? Like, you're doing this for hundreds of thousand people, whatever it is. How are you doing that for you?
One of the reasons I think we gone with, now at the moment, Chaplaincy Australia has a contract. One of the reasons I felt we needed that rather than be employed directly by the airport, for example, which could have been a choice, was having that accountability around supervision, which is really important in those critical times. But I also work in an incredible environment. So often our job's around stories, and you share stories with airline staff. You know, obviously you don't give away details, but we're all in this together. You know, if somebody has, for example, we've had a staff member that's had to do CPR on somebody. We often try to phone the hospital to find out, and they've gone to hospital, what the story is. Now, we obviously private information, but if the hospital says, the person's been moved into ICU, for us, that's enough to go back to that person and say, what you did, that person is now alive, right? And it lifts it. So I guess we find those places to celebrate. Yes. Yeah. And I have a great team. I have a fantastic family. Yes. Although my family does get sick of the airport story sometimes. It because of that, and there's always something new that's happening. But again, self-care is really important. So really having your faith grounded, knowing where that is and that sort of stuff is really important to be able to do what we do. Yeah.
You've shared some of the incredible stories, and like you said, I'm sure you've got a zillion more as well. Is there just a funniest story, like something that's happened and you're like, oh my goodness, this is the one I love telling at a party because I can't believe this happened, or something like that? There
is. I hope I can say this on radio.
It's always a good story coming.
In actual fact, it was one of those where I'd actually just been supporting a death in their terminal, but it was a guy that was all by himself. So it wasn't the usual where there's family around and you've got to do all of that sort of stuff. So I stayed with the person until the coroner came and we were walking away. So I'm walking back through the terminal. I think at those moments you're deep breathing and you're trying to just, what do I find next? But I'd be happy if I didn't find anything next for a little bit, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, I'm walking past and this elderly gentleman walks to me, toddling towards me, beautiful smile on his face, and so I gave him a nice big smile. And his wife's got all the luggage on the trolley behind her, and you can see her sort of struggling to push the trolley. He'd gone past me, and next minute she screamed and dived past me. And all I could think at that moment was, I'm going to turn around and see this guy on the floor. Because that's what the reaction was. Well, I turned around, and the poor bloke, he was still standing there smiling, but his pants had fallen down, and he wasn't wearing any underwear. And his wife was trying to grab the pants before they hit the ground. Well, I helped her, and we got him around the corner into a bathroom. Thought that was all good. He walked out, still smiling. They fell down again. She hadn't done them up, tied it up. So later on, I was able to, share their story. And they travelled from the UK. Probably not going to travel again because he obviously had some health issues.
Yes.
But we were able to share a joke. I helped them with an earlier check-in and all that sort of stuff. So. Yeah, but it was we did have a bit of a laugh over that.
That's right. Well, and especially those two, and I think what a good microcosm of what I'd imagine you having. You're not sure what you're walking into next.
No.
Is it something like that? Is it a death? Is whatever it is, and it's remarkable. Sort of final question for me, I think, as we wrap up, Martyn, is really what can we take from your experience? Right, this show's called Towards Understanding. The idea is, how do we all head towards a better part in our world? And I wonder if the question for you is, as you deal with people, as you provide hope, and you go through do I need to sit down and just be quiet with them? Do I need to stand and talk? Do I need to get on the phone and help somebody? Is there a tip, a trick, whatever it is, a way to think, perhaps, about when we come across someone who is in need? And I think sometimes our idea is to go, I'm not quite sure how to help them, so I'm just going to walk past rather than help. What would be the way we should posture ourselves, or whatever it might be?
Look, I've thought about this, and I think life after COVID has really taught me a lesson. I don't know about what you feel, but I feel we have an anger in the world, a frustration. People have lost what I call humanity, where we're actually kind to each other. I've seen it in airport queues. I've never seen it before, where people feel that they're too close to each other, and then they start punching each other. Or I've then come alongside a young staff member trying to help a customer, but the customer's been so abusive that then I take the time with them when they're in tears to try and encourage this person. So for me, I think if we could, and as Christians, we could be the leaders in this, just think of ways that we could be kind to people. Now, my wife's probably going to jump up and down because she knows how frustrated sometimes I get driving on a road. But it's a lesson for all of us. And it's a lesson for me. How can I actually be kinder to somebody? What can I do? And often that means taking a step, taking a breath, and actually thinking about how I can do something for somebody. One of the things I love doing at the airport is, buying coffee. We have lots of coffee at the airport.
Yes.
But actually putting some extra money across the thing, so the next 4 or 5 people will get a free coffee. Yeah. It's amazing what that does for not only the next few people who come, and I've been blown away by how many times a person has come to me and said, "You don't know how much I needed that. Wow. This is what I'm going through," or conversation has happened. But the other thing I see is the smile and joy that it puts on the face of the barista and the staff, because they're telling people, "Hey, you got a free coffee this morning." It's just amazing. So I think if there's something we can do, I had a lesson a long time ago about the church. We're pretty good as a church when we gather, but actually better as a church when we scatter. Yeah, nice. When we get people as Christians into the neighbourhoods, and you start to look after your neighbourhood, and you start to do acts of kindness, then it changes the world. Yeah. And I think after all that frustration you hear in the airport and stuff, the one thing that we can do is provide that calm voice. I often look at it with mental health. We had a lot of mental health stuff at the airport, and there's often a police response, and they come around, they do an amazing job. My hat off to them. But what happens is they stand there and have to do their stuff, and they've got their guns and their whatever else, but it's part of their uniform. But in walks the chaplain, we don't walk in with guns and stuff, but we walk in with a bottle of water
Yeah.
or a cup of coffee.
Nice.
And often the person with mental health says, and I've had it time and time again, when we sit there and we don't judge them, they said, you're the only person who's listened to my story. Even though it's so far out left field.
Yes.
And I think if we can give people that time to be heard and to do something kind, then we're going to change the world.
Yeah, I love that. I did say that was my final question, but I've got one more but we're going to go from the deep to the ridiculous. Because I thought to myself, how many steps each day do you get? Do you keep a track on that? Because you must never need to go to the gym or anything else ever.
Yeah, it's all the cream cakes you have with the coffee.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Look, you can get your steps up. I don't have any trouble getting the 10,000 steps up, especially with all the terminals together. But the biggest day I've ever had is, it was a very long day and we had some incredible stuff happening, but I did actually time one day and I did 21 kilometres of walking in one day.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Bet you slept well that night.
I did.
Yeah, I reckon.
Or maybe for the next couple of days.
Martyn, it's been wonderful having you in. Thank you for the work that you are doing. Thank you also for the encouragement, I think, and the challenge you've given us now too, right? How do we be kind? How do we be on the lookout for that? And, it's lovely to be able to celebrate your story through this TV show as well from it. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Martyn Scrimshaw has been my guest. He was the inspiration for the upcoming TV show this next week on SBS called The Airport Chaplain. He is the head of chaplaincy at Melbourne Airport. Here on Towards Understanding.